Thank you very much. I think the mic. No, is it working? Yes, it is. Okay. Um, yeah, actually, someone skipped the first slide. I'm going to talk about not being boring. It's a tremendous pressure for many reasons. One reason is I'm going to show presenter in presenter today, and it's the first time that this is in public. No one's seen this out there. I think there's a web stream about this as well. And yeah, I can't be boring, right? So there's these two kind of pressures that really weigh on me. So I hope that you show some empathy. As a preliminary, for those who don't know I a writer and where I come from, I a writer was started in 2008. And the idea was to create a new kind of writing app. The idea was simple. It's supposed to be a writing app that you can write with. Sounds a bit like the idea for the Seinfeld show. But if you think about it, Word is not really, it's good at a lot of things. It's a wonderful application, but it's not that great to write in. I found out as a teacher of Microsoft Office that most people spend their time, changing fonts and layouts. And I had to teach a couple of students at art school in Basel, and they spend all the time with line height and things I didn't know even existed. And so after becoming a designer myself, I started understanding the student and so on, but I understood even better that maybe there is a way with design to create an application that's a bit more like a typewriter. And yeah, up until that point, Word was the main thing to write. It still is, unfortunately, but we had some success with our app. To give you an idea of how it looked at the time, this was one of our launch videos.
Don't fall in love with me yet. We only recently met. True, I'm in love with you, but you might decide I'm a nut. Give me a week or two to go absolutely cuckoo. Then when you see your error, then you can flee in terror. Like everybody else does. I only tell you this cause I'm easy to get rid of. But not if you fall in love. Now that I'm on the make, and if you make a mistake, my heart will certainly break. I'll have to jump in a lake, it's only fair to tell you I'm absolutely cuckoo. It's only fair to tell you I'm absolutely cuckoo.
So for an agency like us, small agency with, at the time, maybe 6 or 7 people, it was a huge success. In the 12 years we've ran the app, we've sold over 3 million copies, and it has defined sort of a new category of focused writing apps. Now there are hundreds of similar apps out there, which is a great thing. We did not replace Word. We didn't think we could, but with all the other apps that have, I think it's fair to say, learned from our success, we changed things quite a bit. Now, 3 years ago, during the Corona hideout, we decided that we should do something similar to presentation apps. And again, as you know, the point of attack is Microsoft, so it's easy to punch up. Microsoft is a great enemy. It's the classic, David versus Goliath situation. So you can only win if you only get, and that's the typical bad idea of a bad business plan, if you only get a little piece of their pie, you'd be rich. So our point again was that PowerPoint is a great app. It can do many things, but it's not that great to present or to create presentations. The main problem is that PowerPoint is boring. It's boring in a way that we don't even realize anymore how terrible it is and how much it affects us every day. In a typical business environment, it seems acceptable to bore people for hours. without any interference, without any possibility to escape or protest. It's just normal. It's not only normal, it's professional to be boring. I don't know how it was previously. When you look at shows like Mad Men, it all looks a bit more interesting, also a bit more nasty and stuff, we know that. But in my business lifetime, PowerPoint played a huge role in facilitating boredom. I'm quite sure about that. Now, some more scientific minds went and did some research, and they found out that 37% of our time is spent in meetings and presentations. It's not such a shocking number. Probably most of you spend about that amount of time. In the United States, they hold 11 meetings a day. Imagine that. And 90% of the presented information is forgotten. I blame PowerPoint. I have no perfect scientific proof for that, but I'm quite sure, just from my 20 years of experience making and listening to PowerPoint presentations. And one of the motivations we had when we created this new app was that we said, imagine, it's a great thing that people have this space where someone can talk and other people can listen, we can change minds, that's a great thing. But imagine all that time, these 11 million meetings every day in the United States would be used to actually say something that matters, something that people really believe, Imagine that in these 11 million meetings every day in the United States, people would tell a good story. Scientifically speaking, we know that boredom is the #1 job killer. We talk a lot about burnout, and we talk a lot about depression induced by work. We rarely talk about boredom. I don't know why, because actually this seems to be the #1 reason why people quit their job. So yeah, what can we do about it, and why does no one revolt? Well, we analyze that too, because we're so thorough as designers. We say first we need to understand the problem really precisely before we design anything. And when you do work for yourself, you can really do that. And so someone in the team said, you know what, I think it's not just in a business situation that we're bored to death. It starts much earlier. It starts at school. Because school is a series of very boring presentations that prepares us for a life of boring presentations, for a life in PowerPoint. And, while this sort of felt like a metaphor for me, because when I went to school, there was no PowerPoint, it actually is literally so right now. Microsoft offers a full office suite for every pupil in Switzerland. I have a son and a daughter. My son was able to create the fanciest slide animations in PowerPoint before being able to write a complete sentence. My daughter came to me because she saw her older brother working in PowerPoint. She wanted to download PowerPoint as well in first grade so she could hold a presentation at school about her lemonade stand that she runs with her friends. And then, I thought, well, it's good that kids are prepared for work, right? So we always complain school is not practical enough, they should be prepared for work. So yeah, in a way it's maybe good that they get prepared for work, but then at the same time I realized that while they can make PowerPoint presentations for years, they could still not really express themselves well. So they learn to spell, they learn to set commas in the right place, they learn grammar, but they don't learn to tell a good story. They don't learn to express themselves truly, passionately, clearly, in a way so others can follow what they have to say. Kids learn to listen, to sit still, and to stop causing trouble. And these pupils, they become teachers and, business people, and they continue the traditions. So teachers and pupils, professors and students, everybody gets to learn and teach in PowerPoint these days. I was astonished because the biggest beta group that we have, or the loudest, I'm not so sure if it's really the biggest, but definitely the loudest, are professors at university. And I didn't know that now at university everybody uses PowerPoint. I have a beard, a white beard, and I didn't know this. I haven't been at university for 20 years. They all use PowerPoint all the time. And so what's exactly the problem with PowerPoint? Let's dig into the UX, right, of this. These are not teachers, by the way. These are, this is the original team that made PowerPoint in the 90s. But for some reason, the 90s fashion they wear looks a lot like the PowerPoint 2022 templates. And this is the root of the problem. The root is not that the templates are tacky. They are, but you know, that's just a matter of taste. And famously, I mean, Microsoft famously doesn't have taste, right? But the problem is that we are forced to deal with it. The problem is that picking templates is where you start in PowerPoint. Instead of thinking about what you want to say, and in what order you present your story, you start by picking a design. And then, you know, you choose and you alter the next page layout, or you improve it with the brand new fancy AI design tool that they introduced now. So you do not only have templates, but you also have a robot that tells you put this here, you put this there, and then it's much better. But they do everything so you don't think about what you should say. Then, you know, the last step usually is that you fill these slides with text. And then lots of text, right? Preferably bullet points, because bullet points save space. And you want to fill your slides with as many bullet points as possible so you don't forget what to say. PowerPoint starts with design and then it moves in a weird cycle between picking layouts and changing layouts and rearranging the slide order and dragging and filling text boxes, picking fonts and colors and importing graphics. But there's no clear flow, there's no structure. You do everything at once. Maybe that's just me, but I haven't found someone that could tell me that there's, you know, like a clear user flow inside PowerPoint. That PowerPoint was thought in a way that, you know, it directs you from the beginning to the end. It just do everything you want, mostly design, mostly bad design, as much as possible until you're tired. And then, you know, you don't need to practice and memorize your presentation. That's because you have all these bullet points, right? So it's completely overrated how the Greeks and the Romans spent half of their time practicing their presentation. We don't need that anymore. We have technology now. So usually, instead of practicing, you just go back and forth in full screen to see how the slide looks, right? And yeah. Then, when it looks really nice, then you make a handout of it as well. It's a PDF with like lots of slides, with lots of small bullet points that you can send out to your friends and business colleagues, and they look at it on the cell phone and Zoom, and they have lots of fun with the handouts, right? Because they're full of information. Usually then when you present, you read from the screen. Of course, you don't read from the screen. You know that this is not very interesting, right? You don't pack, you all do not pack your slides with bullet points. No one does that here, right? No. You already... It's the others that do this, right? Now you can say, well, always hating on the PowerPoint, you know. Actually, the responsibility for a presentation is with the person presenting, right? So if you don't want to use PowerPoint, don't use it. If you want to use it in a good way, use it in a good way. You can't just always blame Microsoft for all the evil in the world. And yeah, it's a fair point, but as Professor Edward Tufte also says, it's a bit more complicated than that. Remember school and how we're conditioned to just, endure boredom, and now that we're all teaching all teachers and all pupils to use PowerPoint all the time. What makes this very complicated is that PowerPoint, and now I'm quoting Professor Tufte, has a distinctive, definite, well-enforced, and widely practiced cognitive style that is contrary to serious thinking. So PowerPoint is not designed to make and hold captivating presentations. It's optimized for us to click around, to make us waste time on graphic design, to make us pretend that we know what we're talking about, and to make others accept boring, empty speeches as professional input. Part of the problem is cultural, but part of the problem is also in the design of the software. Dwight Schrute said it distinctly.
It's my own fault for using PowerPoint. PowerPoint is boring. People learn in lots of different ways, but experience is the best teacher.
So, now that we understand the problem profoundly, what are the actual design challenges here? Well, presentation apps haven't fundamentally changed in the early 90s. They were designed as, real slides, like transparent plastic elements you put on a projector, and it's still somewhere inside the app. If you think about the classic method to hold a speech, it used to be quite clear, and it had a very linear approach, at least at first sight. You look at what do you want to say. Yeah, now I'm reading from the slide. I'm not going to do that. But the process is very clear and straightforward, and it works. It was developed 2,500 years ago, and it's very solid. It still works quite well. We've forgotten about it because technology helps us to avoid all these tedious things like practice. But of course, what looks like a step-by-step approach was a bit more complex than that. Still, if you start with the idea, and you structure what you want to say, then, only then, you illustrate what you want to say, you practice it, and then you offer an easily reachable rich text handout. You're very much in tune with Cicero and Socrates. So what kind of solution did we find to support this type of classic workflow? So we said that you should start with your idea, and the best way to develop an idea, very unspectacular, is to write it down. Now, as I mentioned before, there are different ways to start writing something down. You can just write it down, like this. Or you can start with an outline, like this. Or, and that's pretty cool, you can start with an existing idea. You can paste an existing text from an email, from a tweet storm, from a chat that you have. And if you have the right app, the app turns it into a presentation. So like this. What's important is that the app you design that doesn't facilitate you filling it with bullet points or reading from the slide is that it discerns what you say and what you show. So the script in presenter makes a clear distinction between what you see, that's in blue, and between what you say, which is in white on black here. And once you start thinking about your presentation as a story, not as a series of split up weird slides that are hard to understand in what they are to begin with, it actually become quite fast and since it's always a bit difficult to start a text, but then once you're in it, you're very, very, very quick, and you're not stuck in questions about what kind of font do I use, what kind of layout, and what kind of pictures. You use images to get attention, and you only use them when you've worked out exactly what you want to say. So you use images really, as an illustration of what you say to direct people's attention to your word. This is the next step, how it would evolve. Once you've figured out the structure and what you want to say, you then can add images to illustrate your point. Practice is really important. As I said, by design, in PowerPoint, it's not very easy because you always need to go full screen and then out. We decided that it's better to have 2 windows that can be used independently. So you have your editor where you write your presentation, and on the right side you see the actual visual. And so when you practice, you're able to edit your speech or some spelling mistakes right away without leaving the full screen mode. Having 2 windows also helps you a lot when you have a Zoom meeting, because then you can easily just put the focus on one window while you have your speech notes in the other. So you don't need 2 monitors to hold a presentation. We also figured that it would be nice that if you hold a presentation like this one, where the stakes are high and when you're nervous, that you have a safety net. And the safety net, we know from politicians speaking, the most classical form of a safety net would be a teleprompter. Now, a lot of presentation apps have similar functions like that, but we just made it much, much nicer. So this is what I see currently on my monitor. On the left side, I see what I'm supposed to say if I get lost. Now, the safety net, the teleprompter, is not something you're supposed to use all the time, because people will realize, oh, he's just reading from the slide, that seems a bit lazy and insecure. But you want it there in case you get lost, or in case something is really complicated, or you can't remember, a full paragraph of Professor Tufte's refined quotes. Now, what about the design? Design is still an element, right, in a visual app like this. Now, we say this design should be fully automatic. You shouldn't have to deal with the question, do I put this on the left, do I put this on the right? If you have 2 images, you put them next to each other. That's it, right? And we've developed a system where that detects how many elements you have on a slide and then automatically finds the layout. That in itself is not that hard. You can see here like a couple of variations of what happens when you put more images or text and images on a slide. You can see the different types of slides that we offer, so it's not just all text. If you want to, you can work in a very, very visual way. But the really tricky part is that we also wanted to avoid the situation where, you get these PDFs with 6 slides with all the where you need to like fumble around if you look at the presentation on a different device. So we figured we should do responsive design for slides. Now, all know the deal with responsive design. It's been around for a long time. We know how it works, not that hard to do. Well, actually, responsive slides was a complete nightmare, because you can't just escape to the scrolling if you have too much information, right? You have to make it work on an iPad, on a desktop. And there are conferences where they have screens that are as wide as the span between these two screens. And we wanted to support all of this. So what did we do? We worked with Mike Riedberg, and he helped us developing this insane engine that not only scales all these different possible designs to different viewports, but it allows also to have more text, and that text to be scaled down if in case someone really wants to put too much text on the slide against our will, it is possible. And to have different templates as well, where that happens. This was in itself almost a year of development. It's insanely difficult, and it works quite well. We had to use an old trick in the end, though, for the phones. I mean, putting 5 images on a phone without scrolling, that just doesn't make sense. So we gave up at that point and said, okay, if you get your slides on the phone, then you have to scroll, which I think is okay, right? It's okay to scroll. So the amount of auto layouts that I showed you in the beginning, you have 2 images, just put them next to each other, of course, it multiplies almost exponentially when you have different templates and different viewports and so on. And up to this day, we had a lot of little problems and bigger problems, but this was by far the hardest thing to solve. It doesn't exist as far as I know. There are parts and elements of our app that I've seen out and about, and the longer I wait, the more similar products come out, so it's time to really show it right now, but this aspect hasn't been done. There are other things like being able to pick different templates without leaving the presentation started from scratch, to change all the fonts, you know, with one click in one place, to change all the colors with one click in one place without the whole layout falling apart. This is possible. We added image management where, you know, you can see all the images that are used inside a presentation, and you can change the names so they stay meaningful. If you add screenshot after screenshot after screenshots, you don't know what it is anymore, and our app allows to do that. It allows to delete unused images so the presentation doesn't become too heavy. There's an easy way even to find stock images in the app, but probably we're going to kick this out because stock images, yeah, it's rarely really useful. I mean, when we show this to other people, they're like, whoa, that's the best feature ever. But it's, you know, you go back into the Microsoft world when you do this. We know that not everybody, as in this room probably is the case, is familiar with Markdown. It's been one of the biggest hurdles for the adoption of IA Writer. So we figured we'd do a bit something like a WYSIWYG for Markdown. So we have an inspector with all the Markdown commands, so you don't need to browse around the internet to find out how to make a link or an image in Markdown anymore. And we offer readable text documents as normal text handout. So it looks like this if you export a document. Because you have all this speech inside the app, it actually, you know, it actually makes a lot of sense to just read it like that. And if you take care of your text, it's actually quite efficient and fast to read a presentation like this, instead of figuring out what people could have meant with all these weird layouts and bullet points. As I said, there's a teleprompter. Again, this is how I see it on my screen. And the best thing is how fast it is. And I'm not talking about the app performance. Now with this size, it still needs some work. Performance is better than PowerPoint, but that's not really a good measure. But it is extremely fast to create a presentation. I used to spend at least 1 to 2 days to create like a client presentation or so. And now I could, if I had the nerve, I could just start like 45 minutes before. Because I write it down like an email, then add a couple of pictures that matter, and the app does pretty much the rest for me. I need to, of course, optimize it a bit, but it's incredibly fast. And that's the main response we've gotten from our, I think, 3,500 beta testers that we have in the meantime. They all say, like, it's incredible how much faster it is when you focus on your story than when you focus on your design. So these were all like bits and pieces of the app. Of course, you only really get to know how it really is when you use it, and I will give you all an early access if you want to. But a video will also do a lot of work in trying to bring all this together. I'm almost done.
done it again. How? It's beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
Wow.
It's been 4 years, and you know, it took a lot of nerves to just continue and continue and trying to understand each and every little problem. But you know, it's not like I'm happy with it right now. I just don't know how to improve it anymore.
Yeah.
Not really. So it's really like that.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm looking at it like, because I've been using Keynote for a long time because it's more elegant. It's easier than PowerPoint. But I'm trying to use it like this, and it doesn't work because I want to have this consistency, and I get to slide 10, and all of a sudden the size that I gave the title is not right anymore, so I have to go back and change them all. And that's just one example of the problems that this addresses. I mean, so is it ready? Can I have it? Can I have it right now?
Yeah, you can. You can write us an email with front as the subject line, and then we'll give you quick access. We have a couple of thousand people that were waiting impatiently, but you know, I can't just show you this beautiful chocolate and then say like wait another half a year or however long it's going to take.
Well, there's a bit of a flame war going on here in the comments. Let me start with this one. Can you help me understand why people ask for a copy of the slides in my work presentations when I know for the fact that they won't actually open them? Do they want to make fun of them later that day? Are they flirting with me? These are important questions. Do you have any insight?
Yeah, I need to first get a glass of water and really think deeply about this before I can answer.
One question was, Oliver, can I download Presenter? You've already answered that. Roland asks, Oliver, why didn't you just extend IA Writer?
Yeah, well, that of course was the original plan. We've done a lot of work in JavaScript to make it possible to write presentations in IA Writer, and it would have been a separate template. It was working all right, but a lot of people also say, why don't I just use this method in PowerPoint? Well, because it's not designed for it. And there are lots of things that are very, very hard to do if you don't have an optimized environment for that exact process. So it's very, very intense what it does. And it couldn't be done in this shape and form in IA Writer.
I can imagine. Ben is asking, what are the most common mistakes you see designers make when they present?
Yeah, I mentioned, of course, reading from slides or having slides that are too packed. But I don't know, like it's not, the longer I worked on this, the more I realized I do this all the time as well, that, I want to do a really good job and I want to impress people with the nice, because I'm a designer and I want to impress people with the perfect typography and the coolest infographics. And then before I know, a week's gone by and it's still all shit, and I feel like I don't know what I even want to say. And I usually do at the beginning. I think I have a pretty clear idea of not a clear idea, but I have an idea of what I want to say, and then I lose it, digging around with graphics. I don't know if developers have a similar problem, but designers certainly have. I hear a lot of people saying like, no, I don't have a problem with presentation. I naturally don't use a lot of text. And we also get this type of feedback sometimes from beta users, and then I look at their slides and I'm like, you do have a problem. One thing that we've been fighting with is someone said that the only way they could ever use this if it had like bullet points that blind in one after the other. And there are other like weird, very important things. And then usually people don't give you the feedback you get for an existing app where they already paid. It's like, I want this, otherwise I'm gonna give you 1 star. They say like, if you don't have that bullet point animated thing I said, you will not be successful. I won't buy it, and millions of others will not buy it. That's the type of feedback. So people always try to blackmail you somehow when it comes to features.
They seem to be kind of missing the point. Will there be a Linux/web version? Or is it Mac only?
Yeah, like in doing beta tests, we found out like a big target group will be teachers, right? Like I mentioned that before. And we know from IA Writer that a lot of teachers would love to use IA Writer at school, but neither companies nor school want to install software, native software. So of course we know to be more successful we would need a web version for businesses and for schools and so on. But we first just wanted to make a really cool app. And then, you know, if it's successful enough, we can think about that. But performance-wise, it's going to be tough. One thing I really don't like, I don't like Electron apps to write in. I don't like web apps to write in. This is sort of like ideology. I just don't like that kind of like waxy feeling of typing in a web view. But of course, as an alternative, a web version would be very powerful. What we do have planned and what we have prepared thoroughly is to be able to share presentations online. That's currently not possible. Won't be possible in version 1. And why did we need to prepare this? Well, you know, these presentations, if you put videos and so on in it, they get very, very heavy, and we can't give that out for free. So we needed to have like a payment situation there where people could buy server space.
Right. Okay. We have maybe a couple more questions, but there seems to be several more. Let me just quickly, and they keep coming in. I can't stay on top of it. Okay, so this one is, your presentation style is quite fun and engaging. Is the software also supporting with a presentational style guide? For example, storytelling hints for business meetings, reports, or school presentation, thinking about boring, educated PowerPoints people?
No, it only supports you in the sense that, you know, we designed it in a way so you really focus on what you want to say. And we can't force people to only add images after they fulfilled a certain amount of words or anything like that. But we strongly suggest that you really start just with text. And then if you have a good story, then the rest falls into place. And it's actually so fast that once you get used to not spending hours and hours fiddling with text boxes, it's actually, in a similar way as IA Writer is fun when you get used to it, it's actually it comes naturally that you do it better. Of course, presenting is something you need to exercise like anything else. It's not the first presentation I give, and it's not the presentation that makes me, you know, that makes me funny. It's also my strange personality. But I think that this focus on story, that's like once this became clear, it all fell into place, and that's all you need. That's all you need. Yeah. And then you just need to exercise and exercise and exercise, not only holding one presentation after another, but before the presentation you need to practice. I mentioned that in the presentation as well.
Matt is asking, what about my CI/CD, like my corporate identity?
Yeah, so the really good news is if you set up your CI/CD in a template, then you don't need to worry that other people mess it up anymore. It's the same with IA Writer, only what is very annoying in IA Writer, it's very hard to change fonts and layouts and so on. And here we have an inspector that allows you to pick fonts already. When it comes to layouts, like I said, it's responsive, so forget about the exact control where which box comes. That doesn't make any sense. So if you have a CI/CD that is like keen on layout, nah, it's not your app. But these CDs suck anyway. A good CD mainly says, this is our font, and this is our color. And that's mostly enough for a good CD. If you have the line height right and so on, you're good.
Okay, last question. Now that you have solved Word and PowerPoint, when will you do Excel?
Yeah, so I left this part out. Like, so people kept asking us, yeah, what will you do next? Will you do a mail app? And I always thought if we do something else, I wasn't planning to, because I'm super happy just working on Writer. I love the app as much more than in the beginning. But then one of our developers developed this markdown presentation app, and he tried to sell it. No one gave a shit. And then he was like, okay, I give up. Do you want to buy it and, you know, make it an IA thing? And I was like, I hate PowerPoint. I usually don't even use slides anymore. I just talk. I prefer that. It's more natural. And then I looked at it and I thought, like, yeah, but I've made so many presentations. I kind of know how to make a presentation. I don't know. I know what what would be a good presentation, and I thought like this is an interesting problem to solve, and then became this rabbit hole of 3 years. But I'm actually fine. I'm fine with presentation and writing. I don't need to reinvent everything. But I'm super happy we did this now because it was a lot of fun to ask yourself all the time, how should it actually be? What would be better? And then solving all these little details. To give you just one more idea, the things I left out is we asked ourselves, okay, so there is speech and there is text that you see on the slide. How do we differentiate that, right? And then I thought very early on, you know what? Just normal paragraphs that needs to be speech because they translate so well from a text document back into a handout. And everybody was giving me shit. It's like, no, then people would be annoyed. How do I put text on a slide and so on? And then we went through hundreds of iterations until we said like, okay, you put a tab in front of text on the slide because we don't want text on the slide to begin with and people should figure it out. Solving all these little problems, and it's not a perfect solution that we had, but solving it to the point where we just don't know how to do it better, it was a lot of fun.
I think it's going to be a big deal. Yeah. Oliver Reichenstein, thanks so much.
Thank you too.